Hey guys, welcome to Boxing Squad for boxing news and views from around the internet. Showtime has confirmed it will not be running the Deontay Wilder and Luis Ortiz rematch pay-per-view. That looks like it will be handled by Fox. So Showtime Sports President Steven Espinoza has told ESPN, "We had the opportunity to distribute the pay-per-view and were in discussions, but ultimately the deal didn't make sense for us. As much as we love Deontay Wilder and as much as we believe Luis Ortiz is an exciting rematch, we weren't going to take what we felt was a disproportionate risk to get the event. There are no hard feelings with PBC or Deontay. We got a full and fair opportunity to secure the fight and we made the decision not to." So that is Steven Espinoza talking to ESPN. And the article here, which you can see on screen by Dan Raphael of ESPN, says that the pay-per-view will be handled by Fox. And this fight is potentially going to be on November 23rd. All the details are yet to be confirmed. But I guess this was almost one of those worst kept secrets in terms of boxing. It had been sort of leaking out for a couple of weeks now that Showtime was unlikely to get the event, that it was going to be on Fox and going to be on Fox on November 23rd. And it was likely to be announced that the rematch officially announced on the Spence Porter card, which is coming up this weekend. So only days away from this video being done. So, I mean, I think Steven Espinoza here, talking to ESPN, giving some of these details, he's getting ahead of the story. That's exactly what he's doing. He's trying to position Showtime in a certain way where I think really the writing has been on the wall that they were going to miss out on this and that it was going to go to Fox. And ultimately, you could even hear within the statement, even though he sort of positioned it and couched it in a certain way, they really couldn't compete with Fox pay-per-view and sort of offer whatever deal has been decided between Fox, PBC for this rematch between Deontay Wilder and Luis Ortiz. And some of this, I'm sure, will be a bitter blow for Steven Espinoza. You may recall when Deontay Wilder walked away from the DAZN deal, which would have featured Dominic Breazeale, and then obviously a couple of fights with Anthony Joshua, and potentially a fourth fight, that was going to be a $100 million plus deal. And at the time, Steven Espinoza, almost gleefully after Deontay Wilder turned it down, made all sorts of statements that it was about loyalty and that they were going to be offering some sort of deal up for Deontay Wilder and that he wasn't going to be missing out. And they even treated his fight with Dominic Breazeale like it were a pay-per-view, even though it wasn't on pay-per-view. They had all sorts of features that they did for that fight and build-up events that they only normally do for pay-per-view. So they had all the bells and whistles and trimmings for that fight, even though it wasn't pay-per-view. And they ended up having to pay Deontay Wilder more than they otherwise would have. So I'm sure Showtime and Steven Espinoza had expectations that them holding the Breazeale fight was going to put them in a good position for fights going forward, pay-per-view events where they could really clip the ticket and make a lot of money. Espinoza stressed the loyalty element that, you know, they were loyal to Deontay Wilder and yada yada, all that sort of stuff, and ultimately that does seem like it has sort of come to nothing. And Deontay Wilder had never completely hitched his wagon to Showtime. So I think it would be somewhat unfair for people to go in on him because he had left it sort of, you know, that the market would dictate, he was a free agent, yada yada, all that sort of stuff. Even though people did doubt some of those sorts of statements, obviously he's gone off to Fox for this Fox pay-per-view, which will be announced in short order. So Espinoza, I'm sure, will be spitting tax, and this is a very deliberate sort of ploy using ESPN, getting this news out here. Very deliberate, trying to get ahead of the story and position it that they, you know, obviously have pulled out that it was their decision. Ultimately, they weren't going to get it. That much is clear. And they were talking about in there a disproportionate risk to get the event. And that sort of throws up another sort of bone here to talk about. Obviously, there's going to be a lot of money in the pot to run this one. It is a pay-per-view event which will be on Fox, but it is a fight that not everyone was really clamoring for. It was probably a rematch that we could have done without. I don't think fans were really sort of thirsting after this like it had to happen. And the first fight, it wasn't on pay-per-view. It did okay numbers in terms of, you know, the viewing figures on Showtime. But in terms of a pay-per-view event, what is the real interest here, especially if it's going to be, what, $75? Do people want to see Deontay Wilder knock out Luis Ortiz for $75, likely in a shorter time than the first time around? And that is the sort of conundrum here. Fox may have outbid Showtime here, but there is going to be quite a bit of a financial risk, in my opinion, in terms of what sort of numbers this could really pull, because you look at Deontay Wilder, he's obviously raised his profile, he's been fighting better opposition, Ortiz in 2018, and obviously Tyson Fury. He knocked out Dominic Breazeale in a round. His price and value has gone up. So he will be expecting certain money. And Luis Ortiz and his team deliberately turned down, what was it, $6 or $7 million to fight Anthony Joshua. They were really trying to push for a bit more, and it kind of backfired. And Luis Ortiz said, look, this is my fault. Give us the fight. I'll take whatever's on offer. But by then, the opportunity had gone. So I'm sure he will be looking to get paid as well, much more than the $500,000 that he got the first time around. So when he says there's a disproportionate risk to get the event, I think that can only be the amount of money that would be expected for purses, which I'm sure is going to be considerable. It probably collectively is over 8 figures. So what do you make of this? Deontay Wilder and Luis Ortiz, it looks like it's going to be Fox pay-per-view and set to be announced on the Spence Porter card. That has been floating around for a couple of weeks now, and it looks like it's going to be a reality. And Showtime has missed out here. I'm sure Espinoza is bitterly disappointed. All the talk of loyalty a number of months ago when Deontay Wilder walked away from DAZN. Obviously, it has sort of come to nothing for Showtime. Drop a comment, loud and often. Hit like, hit subscribe. Follow me on Twitter, boxing_squared. I'm out.